It's good to have you, man. So we talked a little bit before we got on here about like what song like truly kicked your ass as a producer, as a writer, as a player, as an engineer, and you said
Day in the Life, the Beatles.
Day in the Life by the Beatles. Right.
Absolutely my favorite Beatles production, song, the
favorite production
thought,
of all
the
time.
concept, the whole thing. Absolutely my favorite.
And that's saying a lot. So, and I think we were saying right before we got on here, like, you still can't figure out how the hell they did that.
Well, the thing about that song, I don't know if people are familiar with it, if you're going to play something or not, but either way, it feels like, it came from outer space. That's what's beautiful about that song. I feel like I've been in a studio long enough to know, how a drum kit's recorded or how a bass is recorded or how vocals go on a track. But that one I listen to and it sounds like it's from another planet. I can't possibly imagine human beings getting together and making that record. That's what's so beautiful about that. I read a thing about Eddie Kramer a long time ago. And, some people like to make it sound like a band in the room. And he said something to the fact that he likes to make it, sound like a band in outer space. And I think that song very much has that. I cannot put all the pieces together to make that song make sense. I listen to it, and I'm a novice still to this day when I listen to that song. Even though I've heard it a million times, and like I said, I've been in the studio a lot, I still can't imagine how it was put together.
So you're saying you learn something every time you hear that?
Well, I mean, I think it's, there's so many recording techniques in that, I mean, you've got John playing the acoustic and you've got this feedback tape slap that makes it sound, like it's from outer space. And then you have this gigantic, crescendo of a string section, which is, the time signature breaks. And what's beautiful about that in a day of modern record making where everyone's using clicks, that's symphonic, that the tempo ebbs and flows. And it's like watching a conductor conduct a song. I mean, it starts off slow and then it builds fast and then it builds faster crescendos and then it's double time and then it goes back into a slower thing. You couldn't possibly do that, or at least maybe you could on a click. And that's why I like that. It's treating rock music like orchestra. And I think that's what's beautiful about that song,
Well, hey Dave, have you heard the multi-tracks of that have been floating around?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
and it still doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, the Beatles book goes on to how they bounce and how they cut this and that. Yeah. But what's interesting is you really can't hear it in the stereo mix. But if you've ever heard the 5-1 that's on the Cirque du Soleil production, you can hear Mal Evans counting bars.
Yeah, heard that.
You can hear him counting bars during the string section. It's really pretty impressive and cool.
Still, just imagine them in the session. Like, okay, I've got this song. It goes like this. And then right here, we're going to cut to this gigantic crescendo string thing. And then we're going to go double time. And then we're going to go back to this big outro. It's such a unique production in a lot of ways and experimental. And maybe before Sgt. Pepper and Revolver, people had to go for 2 minutes and 30-second singles. And this wasn't that. But every single part, if you listen to Ringo's drum fills, ba-boom, ba-doom, they're musical, they're lyrical, and everything about that song is lyrical. And even recording Geekdom, I couldn't understand the vocal sound that Paul McCartney has when he comes in on the woke up, fell out of bed part. You hear it, and it took me about 20 years to realize that's proximity effect. It's like you really hear him on that mic, and there's so many.
And John on the breathing, on the heavy breathing.
Yeah, so many things, man, so many things, and that. The way they throw the reverbs and delays on the outro vocals, it's amazing. I've heard the multi-track and they're on one mic doing that, the harmonies, everything. They're on one mic. It's really something that, God, I don't know if anybody's pulled off something that magical since,
One of the high points of my entire life was at Blackbird one year, we played Day in the Life for Jeff Emmerich, who in the 5-1, who had said, I've never heard it. And he was like, oh, they're missing the piano ride here. And they're missing this and that. And then when it got to the very end, he said something really interesting. He said, that other sound in there, that's not a rattle on the piano. That's George playing harmonium.
No kidding. Wow.
George playing harmonium. The Beatles, Day in the Life, Sgt. Pepper's. Yeah,
it's a definite. And just the bass sound on that too, right? That's one of the first times people overdub bass on a record, and you hear it. You hear the room on the bass sound on that. Everything about that is magical, just magical production.
I'm impressed that it's like 2 or 3 songs. Cheers, fucker.
Yeah.
Cheers, fuckers.
We virtually toast. Is that possible? There you go. Boom.
Yeah.
It's like 2 or 3 songs, and it's and then you go to the end, and then you get 20 seconds of silence, and then you get a loop. You know, I mean, there's like hip hop in this thing, like it's crazy.
Totally.
Yeah, the lock groove, the famous lock groove.
Shit, I probably stolen half my career from that one song. You know.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna ask. Like how did that change the way you approach stuff? Like you know, what inspiration did it give you actually in the studio? Have you ever said, man, you know what? I know exactly what we're going to do. And it came from an inspiration on that.
Oh, a million times over. I mean, there are things, you know, the reverse stuff in particular I've used on lots of records. The phasing and flanging, it's all stolen from the Beatles, that stuff. Maybe Itchycoo Park was the first time they used flanging with the small faces. But that era of recording and that style, it still inspires me, no matter if I'm making, you know, a commercial country record or a rock and roll record or a pop record. I'm still stealing from that same template. I mean, I think that's in the back of my head when I'm hearing, you know, a country song. I'm hearing the Beatles. I'm hearing the Stones. I'm hearing that era of recording. I think that to me, you know, I remember being a kid and starting to mess around with 4-tracks, and you say, you know, oh, you get a 4-track. The Beatles were done on a 4-track, but I don't think you can do it on a little 4-track that, you know, we had in the 80s learning on. It was so inspiring to try, but I don't think we ever got close. But I still think about humans playing together when I make records. I still think about, you know, people singing live as they do the track down. I don't think you can get a great, I mean, listen, for me, a lot of people make great records where they've recorded the vocal later, but something happens when a singer's singing with the band. When the singer gets loud, the band gets loud. When the singer gets quiet, the band gets quiet. And that, to me, is what's beautiful about that song and that era of record making. Is just humans interacting. The ebb and flow, it's the tension, it's the mistake. And that's what, you know, still to this day, when I go in to make any record, I'm still trying to go after that feel. Not necessarily copy A Day in the Life, but, you know, copy the essence of humanity, you know? So.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.